Hello, welcome to our webinar, HarperCollins Adult Fall Faves. I'm Donna Seaman, booklist editor for adult books, and I'm really thrilled that you're all here. And we are delighted to have the amazing Library Love Fest marketing team from HarperCollins Adult join us today. Hooray! We will hear from Virginia Stanley, Chris Connolly, and Lainey Mays. And I'm going to give you some background on these Library Love Fest folks. Virginia Stanley is the Director of Library Marketing at HarperCollins. Born and raised on Long Island, she started her publishing career at Doubleday in 1984 and then moved on to HarperCollins. She loves a good coming-of-age story and a twisty psychological thriller. Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little remain her creature comforts. Chris Connolly is the senior marketing associate of the library marketing team at HarperCollins. Hailing from Indiana, he spends his free time reading science fiction and wandering New York City parks. David Lynch, he tells us, is his spirit animal. Lainey Mays is the library marketing assistant for the library marketing team at HarperCollins. Originally from Mississippi, she loves true crime, podcasts, and learning something new. Her favorite book is Anne of Green Gables, and it's all because of The Librarian. So we are going to hear from the Library Love Fest team, and then I'll be back to go over a few last-minute announcements before we get to look at all the books. Take it away, guys.
Hi, hope you all can hear me. I'm Virginia Stanley, Director of Library Marketing at HarperCollins, and thank you all so much for joining us today. This is really exciting. We're so glad to connect with all of you, and we're excited to talk about a lot of the books that we have coming out in the fall, but also books that we have available now that just came out, that are just about to come out, some good books for book clubs. So we have a whole list of books that we'll get to in just a bit. So thanks again for joining in, and I will toss it to Chris.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Connolly. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just to avoid any confusion, that is still me. I know I've shaved since that picture was taken, but I am wearing the same shirt because that is always what happens when a photo of me is shown. I'm always wearing the same shirt. So I am here to help. We're going to go over some very important, very helpful resources that we've put together in this new virtual age that we're living in. But I am here specifically also to help with virtual author events. So if any of you have questions about virtual events, having authors come to your library to speak, again, virtually, we're here to help. So again, there'll be more resources and information available, and also don't hesitate to reach out to us directly, and we'll be reaching out to you as well. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, I'm Lainey, and that photo is in Central Park, and I wish I was there right now. So I wanted to give a little teaser to what we're going to talk about on my end, because we have fun Instagram author account takeovers that we've been doing. So we'll show you some of those, and we have a fun podcast that I put on, and we do author events and lots of fun authors on there. And just letting you know, once we get to the end, if you have any questions for us, you can always email us at librarylovefest@harpercollins.com, and we'll get back to you.
So I guess we'll advance the slide. Donna.
Yes, thank you. So before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that will appear. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides were sent directly to you from Zoom at the start of the webinar, but you can also download them at any time by copying the URL that's on the screen into your web browser. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive a follow-up email containing links to today's slide presentation, the certificate of completion, and video recording. We cannot resist giving you a sneak peek of the HarperCollins stars appearing in book book list. I'm excited to say book list, very special double June issue. I am particularly excited to present Memorial Drive, A Daughter's Memoir by Natasha Trethewey. I'm happy to be highlighting this book not only because it's an exceptionally powerful work, but also because we are thrilled to announce that Pulitzer Prize winner and former U.S. Poet Laureate Natasha Trethewey will be the keynote speaker at the Andrew Carnegie Medals presentation to be held right here on Zoom. This event will be taking place on Thursday, July 9, from 3 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please mark your calendars. The presentation is free and open to all. The winner of this year's Carnegie Medals, Valeria Lusilli, fiction winner for Lost Children Archive from Alfred A. Knopf, and Adam Higginbotham, nonfiction winner for Midnight in Chernobyl from Simon & Schuster, will be receiving their medals, and they will give their acceptance speeches. So please join us. This is not to be missed. And next, we have 2 titles appearing in a very special section in Booklist's Spotlight on Biography and Memoir in June. It's a focus on women in politics. And we have 2 starred books here. This is What America Looks Like, My Journey from Refugee to Congresswoman by Ilan Omar. And Reclaiming Her Time, The Power of Maxine Waters by Helena Andrews Dyer and R. Eric Thomas. Moving on to fiction. In Booklist's June adult fiction section, we have these stellar titles: The Boy in the Field by Margot Livesey, The Lehman Trilogy by Stefano Massini, translated by Richard Dixon, and The Book of Dragons, an anthology, edited by Jonathan Strahan. And now, we celebrate the stars, and I am happy to turn the mic over to the Library Love Fest team.
Okay. Well, here we are. Yes, Lainey, we're going to move on to the first slide. Thank you all for coming. Here's our contact information, and we'll get started. So we have a lot of social media outlets, and we won't spend a lot of time on this because you can catch all of this on librarylovefest.com. But please do visit, because we have a lot of this information pinned to the top of the page, which addresses social media outreach as we are experiencing it right now, and things that we have done to sort of address, you know, just the pandemic and how we're able to communicate with all of you. So all of that is pinned to the top of librarylovefest.com, so you can go there and find out a lot of shenanigans that we're working on. Next. Okay, one of those things that we're doing is door-to-door. As many of you probably know, the Library Love Fest team has been doing Facebook Live presentations once a month from our beloved Tiki Hut at 195 Broadway, where our offices are. Unfortunately, we're not there, but we have ramped it up, and we're doing 2 Facebook Lives a week. And we're calling it door-to-door, from our door to your door. While our doors are shuttered, as are many library doors, we know that you're all working hard to continue to provide services to your patrons and your community. Well, so are we. So we've started this program called Door to Door, and every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, if you go on Library Love Fest's Facebook page, you will find us, the 3 of us, either talking about books or interviewing authors. This is just some of the authors. This is a list of some of the authors who we've interviewed just over the past, I think, 6 weeks. They talk about their books, they read from their books, we take questions from attendees, and it's really a lot of fun, and it's a great way to get the word out there about their books. If you're not on Facebook, not to worry. Every episode is immediately posted to YouTube. Library Love Fest has their own channel on YouTube, so you can see everything then. So the only difference is that you can't, send in a question or something to the featured author. But other than that, it's the same thing. So if you can join, we're tomorrow afternoon, we're having Kate Mulgrew, whose paperback edition of her memoir, How to Forget, goes on sale tomorrow. So if you are interested and available, come to Library Love Fest Facebook page at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and we will hopefully see you there. So we have pulled together some highlights from these door-to-door Facebook Live presentations, and we had to keep cutting it down because we had so much material. So here's just an example of some of the things that you will see in the recordings, but also going forward. This is the sort of thing that you can expect to see when you check out door-to-door.
Librarians have been incredibly brave about being on the front lines of keeping our speech private and available. And there's just no institution outside maybe the people who are working on patients in the coronavirus pandemic that I value as highly as I do America's librarians. So thank you for keeping the faith for all of us.
Yeah, so I live in northern Vermont, near Lake Champlain and about a half an hour from the Canadian border. And it's a small town, as most of Vermont is, and we have a terrific is an understatement, but we have a really great local library. So if I want to know train schedules from Chicago to Los Alamos in the spring of 1944 and what those cars looked like and how long it took, where the layovers were and how much a ticket cost, I can get a book on all those things inside of 48 hours.
So with Dance Away With Me, it's one of those books I love to write and I love to read. It sort of straddles that line between romance and women's fiction.
We have Sarah McLean's Daring and the Duke, which is going on.
Can I just add, this model was Miss New York in the Miss America pageant.
Really?
That those leaves were once Miss Vermont.
I love a noble scoundrel. So, sue me.
Libraries are just a piece of all of our hearts.
Can you talk a little bit about how your process a little bit and how does that work? You're separated by a couple of states. How does that work? And what happens when you don't agree on things? Does that ever happen, sisters?
Yeah, since I'm the youngest one, I insist on getting my way and stomp my feet, and then Valerie usually, right, gets along now.
My goal is just to entertain you. I'm going to build the biggest roller coaster I can. And I'm going to have sudden drops and twists and turns, and hopefully keep you breathless. Hopefully turning page late in the night.
So yeah, the bookmobile it meant a lot to me. It was a real lifesaver, actually. It's hard for me to imagine what my life would have been like or how it might have gone differently without having access to those books, because among other things, escape, but among other things, it was my first window into the idea that the whole world wasn't the world I saw right in front of me.
If there's anything to be gained through going through what the world has been going through, it's to understand that we face a lot of issues that are not that don't respect artificial political boundaries. Viruses, climate change, they don't care. They don't care where the United States ends and Canada begins. And I hope that a critical mass of people finally begins to understand that it's one globe, one world, and we need global solutions.
It's National Library Week, and now more than ever, we want to tell you all how much we appreciate all that you have done, are doing, continuing to do, especially in the face of this terrible pandemic. But we want to honor you, and we want to toast to you. We might toast to you several times throughout this presentation. But for now, our inaugural toast for today's Door to Door. To you, librarians, thank you. Keepers of the Gate, thank you, thank you, thank you. From your various ports in the storm, we honor you during this week and always. So that is a sample of the kinds of authors that we have and the kinds of fun that we have. on our door-to-door series. So they're very conversational, informative, and informal, and fun, and heartfelt and real. So we hope that you can check it out. And again, as I said, tomorrow, Tuesday, May 19th, actress and author Kate Mulgrew will be our guest on Library Love Fest's door-to-door Facebook Live at 2 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, celebrating the paperback publication of her unbelievable, powerful memoir, How to Forget. Lainey, you want to talk about Instagram takeovers?
Boy, do I. So we have extended the door-to-door. Not only are we on Facebook, but every week on Instagram, we feature authors and do author takeovers. So they come all day and they bring pictures from their desk. It's just a way for them to show you where they're working and kind of get you out of your house virtually when you can't leave. So this is a good example. It's our first one with Talia Hibbert, who we all love. And she gave us a nice tour of her desk. And so they do post throughout the day, but then there's a video usually at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and they show a video of them talking and showing the desk. So please follow us at Harper Library and you'll see all the updates and who's coming next.
All right. So yes, virtual author events. I saw someone ask about this. So we put together a step-by-step guide to help you secure authors for your libraries. So you can go to our website, librarylovefest.com, and then you can click on that little tile there, virtual author events, where you can find our step-by-step guide. We can get you access to our author event grids on Edelweiss, so you can look at who is available, and then what we need to know from you in order to help try to secure those authors for your libraries. We know that's a big part of your programming, and we will do everything we can to help the process. So again, just go to our blog, click there, and then we'll help you along the way.
Ooh, back to me for podcasts. So as mentioned before, I am a little bit of a podcast fiend. I love them very much, and I listen to way too many to ever name. But our podcast, the Library Love Fest podcast, which is available pretty much anywhere you, as I say, feed your podcast addiction, because I also love puns. And it's all available listed on the bottom left-hand corner of where you can find us, but on SoundCloud is probably the most direct way. And we just featured a cool conversation. Well, cool doesn't even cover it. It's probably one of our best episodes. With author Emily Gray Tedrowe, The Talented Miss Farwell, which I will present later on, so I'm not going to go into the book, but we had an interview with her father, who is the director of the Darien Library in Connecticut. So it just felt like you were sitting at the dinner table with them. It's so cool, and they are just so smart, and you learn all about the book and just family dynamics, fun stories from the library. Please, if you don't listen to any other podcast episode, listen to this one. It's so cool. So I'll round back to that book, but just remember that that's a really cool episode. And you can call us. Our voicemail is right there. It's also on our website, librarylovefest.com, if you want to give us a call anytime. Send us an email. And this is just
yeah. Oh, sorry, lady. Just was gonna say, yeah, this is just a summary of everything that we offer on Library Love Fest. So whether it's being whitelisted for e-galleys, we have a guide for that. Every video that you see on whether it's videos we did on Facebook Live or part of our door-to-door series, is also available in our video archive. There's Lainey's brilliant podcast link, library hardcover edition guide. And then, of course, sign up for our newsletter for exclusive sneak peeks and galley giveaways and so much more. So that's where you go. On to the books.
On to the books. I'm hoping that you can all hear me, and I'm guessing you'll let me know if you don't. Okay, kicking off this presentation with a book that I love, and I'm not alone in my love for this book, Sue Miller. Sue Miller has written this book, Monogamy, which is coming on sale on September 8th. She's returning to Harper, her original publisher, and I couldn't be more excited when I found out that Sue Miller was publishing her next book with us. I nearly fell off the chair, honestly, because I've been at Harper for such a long time, and I remember when her first books first came out, and boy, Boy, what a thrill, what an honor to have her under our roof again. What's this about? It's about a marriage, a 30-year marriage between two people who couldn't be more, they couldn't be more different, which is probably why they work so well together. Graham is a bookstore owner in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's larger than life. And he's got this bookstore that, oh boy, I wish I could just plot myself there, because it just is this wonderful independent store that has these readings and these parties, and then I don't know, it just sounds so wonderful. She's really captured it so well. And Annie, his wife, is sort of a more reserved photographer, but you know, is right there with her husband Graham. They throw these big parties for authors, for all of their writers and community, and they are the it couple, really, you know. He had a child with in a previous marriage. His former wife is still sort of in their circle. Not sort of, she is. I mean, it says so much about him. It says so much about Annie, his wife, his current wife. And it's just a big circle. I envision him to be a big man with big arms who just encircles. But something happens, and I'm not ruining it for you by telling you that he dies unexpectedly. Horrifically, he just dies. And Annie is left to pick up the pieces. And how is she ever going to fill this massive void in her life? It's just awful. And but then something else happens. And without going into too much detail, I will only tell you that the title of this book is used in a way that is, there's sort of a twist on the word monogamy, shall we say. The book tells you about love, betrayal, and loyalty in a family. There's something that I want to tell you about this book. There was an article that was published in PW recently. This was in the open book column by Louisa Ermelino, and it focused on this book, Monogamy, and the author was interviewed, her agent was interviewed, and Terry Carton, the editor for this book, was interviewed. And what I thought was so striking about this was, and you can find this, we're putting this interview up on, this piece up on Edelweiss, so you can see it. But what I thought was interesting about this, when our editor, Terry Carton, received this manuscript and found out about this new novel, she was so excited because she had been the editorial assistant to the legendary Ted Solotaroff, who was Sue Miller's first editor. And so that was an emotional response. But her other response, the editor, after having read this, was that she was blown away. And then she did a survey. She said, my colleagues are very young. I gave the book to a 20-something, a 30-something. Everyone knew who Sue Miller was. Chris Connolly, who is younger than I am, we are different in many ways, obviously, but also our reading differences are pretty vast. Chris, do you want to chime in on this book?
I was shocked how much I connected with it. I try to go in with an open mind, but you know, inevitably, like you said, Virginia, we gravitate towards certain tastes. But just the way Sue Miller captures moments, sometimes small, quiet moments, but then just gives them such weight and such just importance. I was struck by so many passages in this book. They're just beautiful, and just this marriage and how deeply human these characters are. You just feel them, and it's just a story that really stuck with me. I was just quite struck by how good this book was. Yeah, it's just unforgettable. It's just, it's an unforgettable book. I adore it. Yeah.
I love that you and I love this book. It's just so wonderful. I have, we'll move on because we have lots of books to talk about, but author Juliet Nicholson, I have this quote. She says, the intimacies and doubts and emotion-swerving relationship that is marriage, that emotional snakes and ladders tamed during the day but unleashed in the middle of the night were skewered with such perfect insight. And I was completely wrapped up in the beautifully and often so tenderly observed roller coaster of grief. Oh my goodness, with what exquisite truth Sue Miller writes, an invaluably moving book. I cannot say enough about this book. I am so excited to talk with Sue Miller. She's actually coming on our door-to-door Facebook Live on June 2nd at 2:00 p.m. So Sue Miller fans out there, June 2nd, mark your calendars. And if you've never read Sue Miller, the 3 people out there who've never read Sue Miller, you have got to read this book and you have got to come and hear from her. I cannot wait to talk to her. Sorry, that's enough. We have a lot of books to get to, but Sue Miller, Monogamy, going on sale soon. Oh, and her backlist, all being repackaged, and how beautiful are those repackaged books. Cannot wait. I love them all.
Okay, Moonflower Murders by Anthony Horowitz. I get giddy just talking about this book. I know this is highly anticipated. Magpie Murders was a New York Times bestseller. It was a #1 Library Reads pick, a #1 Indie Next pick. Anthony Horowitz is just an amazing thriller author. He's also the best-selling author of the Alex Rider young adult series. But this is the follow-up to Magpie Murders. And again, I think people have been just champing at the bit for this book. So we follow again, now retired publisher Susan Ryland, who is living a nice kind of idealistic life on a Greek island with her long-term boyfriend. She, is somewhat missing London, and while this life is idyllic, it is also maybe just a little bit boring for her. But a strange occurrence happens when a couple visits her small hotel on this Greek island that she's running, and talk about this mysterious murder that took place during their daughter's wedding in this small Suffolk coast town in this hotel. And what's weird about this murder is, again, it took place the night of their daughter's wedding, but also the late Alan Conway, who is the author of the Atticus Pond series, knew this murder victim and used this case as an inspiration for the 3rd book in his detective series. And certain strange coincidences just begin to pile up, and Susan Ryland feels that she needs to get to the bottom of it. So once again, you find yourself within this book, within a book format. Again, it's a great Agatha Christie inspired, just whodunit that is meta and brilliant and twisty and smart. And I don't think I need to say more because you all know how good these books are. You know how good Magpie Murders was. And this is more than, it's just so exciting. So it's coming in November. That's Moonflower Murders by Anthony Horowitz.
Did someone say meta? Because I have the book for you. This is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth, and you might recognize her from The Miseducation of Cameron Post, but this is her adult debut novel, and I wish you could see my face because I love this book so much, and no matter how long I have, because it could take its own 90-minute webinar, I will never get all of the information from this book into my time because it is just packed with so many cool things. Not only is it over 600 pages, so it's just large in that way, but it's larger than life because it's, like I said, really meta, a book within a book within a movie within a book. It goes on and on. So I think I'll start off. The bedrock for this story is a real person, and Emily found out about her by seeing a small footnote about her. Her name is Mary McLean, and she wrote this memoir now titled "I Wait the Devil's Coming." And she's really famously, it was written in the early 1900s, 1902, and she's famous for just being really openly bisexual and a vocal feminist. And she's credited with ushering in the confessional style of like autobiographical writing. And so Emily thought, well, how many women have been written out of history by just being put in a footnote? And she wanted to kind of blow this out. And I can't tell you how well she has done this. So I think the best way, because it is so large, to describe the book from Emily herself. So she says, Plain Bad Heroines is a meta-gothic sapphic romp about a cursed New England boarding school and the horror film being made about the school. And it features black and white period-inspired illustrations. And then from the text of the book, this is how it describes itself. See, even more meta. It's a story about 3 heroines from the present and more heroines from the past, and how they all collided around Brooke Hance and a book, and also a book about Brooke Hance. I'll say it again, Brooke Hance and a book about Brooke Hance. And there's so many fun things in there that it's laugh out loud funny, as well as spooky. It's great for spooky season in October. And I mean, you're kind of looking over your shoulder. You want to know things are happening and you can't really explain it. But again, so much joy in it. There's all of these footnotes where you're just laughing so hard because you would have not seen that coming, and she adds fun things. It's really got these fun scares. It's an escape from reality, and it's a large book. It's over 600 pages, but that's somehow not enough. I just wanted to keep reading and stay in this world. And it's a Book Expo Buzz Book of 2020, so that's really, we're excited about that. And we have this great Joe Hill quote. We also have a quote from Sarah Waters. It says, brimming with from start to finish with sly humor and gothic mischief. Brilliant. And I just describe it as deliciously dark. But again, we have a lot of queer characters in there, so it's very cool in that way. And it tells a story, you know, it takes a simple story of a real woman and just builds on it from there. And again, I could go on and on talking about it, but I just hope that my love for it comes through in this small amount of time I have to talk about it.
Okay, The Exiles by Christina Baker Kline. This is the New York Times bestselling author of Orphan Train and A Piece of the World. And this is a sweeping historical novel about 3 young women, 2 English convicts, and an orphaned Aboriginal girl in 1840 during the brutal beginning of modern Australia. I love this book, but it's very much, it has a very good, strong sense of place. We meet Evangeline, who is seduced by her employer's son. She is a governess, and she's discharged when her pregnancy is discovered, and she's sent to London's notorious Newgate prison. After being in this place for months, it's this overcrowded, disgusting jail, she's sent off to Tasmania, this penal colony that was established by Great Britain in the early 19th century. What they've done is they've repurposed these slave ships. In this case, it's the Medea, and she is on this journey. She knows she's going to give birth to this baby on this month-long voyage in this horrific conditions. She strikes up a friendship with another woman, Hazel, who is a girl a little older than, she's not very old at all, but she's been sentenced to 7 years transport for stealing a silver spoon. She is a skilled midwife, young, but she is a skilled midwife and an herbalist, and she offers remedies to prisoners and sailors in return for a variety of flavors. You really get a sense of what these people are like and what they'll do to survive. And as I say, Australia has been home to native peoples for more than 50,000 years. The British government in the 1840s considers its fledgling colony uninhabited and unsettled and views the Aboriginals as an unpleasant nuisance. By the time the ship arrives, the Medea, many of them have been forcibly relocated, their land seized by white colonists. And one of these relocated people is Mathena, who is an orphan daughter from one of the tribes there, and she's been adopted by the new governor of Tasmania. So these are the 3 people at the core of this story, and you learn their journey, and it is heartbreaking, but also so informative. It's the beginnings of a new society in this beautiful and challenging land, and it tells the story of Australia from a fresh perspective through their experiences. And while life in Australia is punishing and brutally unfair, it is also for some an opportunity for redemption, for a new way of life, and for unimagined freedom. There were times when I was reading that book, I felt like I couldn't breathe when they're on this ship and it's just awful, and you just, these characters are so drawn out and so fully fleshed, and how they rely on each other, for survival. And it's epic. It really is. There's racism, misogyny, gender, and opportunity. This is great for book clubs. It talks about women prisoners and how they had a chance to start their life over once they had served their sentence. Paula McLean, author of The Paris Wife, says, master storyteller Christina Baker Kline is at her best in this epic tale of Australia's complex history, a vivid and rewarding feat of both empathy and imagination. I loved this book. Well, Paula McLean, you're not alone, because I loved it too. That's The Exiles by Christina Baker Kline.
Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. So I do have a confession. I was up way too late reading this book last night, and I couldn't wait to get on here to rave about it. I first came across this book. You'll know Rumaan Alam from his previous work, including Rich and Pretty, which was a really successful work. And this is a bit of a departure for him in that it has somewhat of a post-apocalyptic feel. But it still takes his really nuanced, sharp kind of political observations and infuses it with like really strong genre writing. But I came across it first because our sales rep, Kate McCune, wrote this really great write-up and sent it out to the sales staff, and we asked if we could share it, which we did. She's just one of the best book talkers you will find. You can see her write-up on our blog. And I just want to read a quick quote from that. The sense of texture and nuance Alam brings to his characters is on full display here, and he's still writing about upper middle class life, race, class, and parenting. He's got a much larger, darker agenda. And just to set this up, it follows two families. One is a middle-class white family who is taking a trip to Long Island to get away for a weekend. And they rent this house in the middle of the woods and are enjoying themselves. They never meet the owners. But then they get a knock on the door one night, and the owners show up. And they say that there's been this huge blackout in New York, that the news is down, the radio's down, it's just completely black and no one has an explanation. And so they were panicked and they drove back home because that's the only place they knew. And for whatever reason, this house still has power. So you have these two families who are kind of thrust into close proximity. And the owners of this house are affluent, they're well-spoken, but they're black. And so you have these kind of interesting dynamics at play where there's assumptions made by one family and the other. And it's just, again, a very nuanced, propulsive thriller, but what is really scary is how people can react to those who they consider others. It's just brilliant. It really is. I think it's really going to thrust Rumaan to a next level. You can see that Jenny Elfel quote. I just love this book. So that's Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam, and that is coming in October.
The Color of Air by Gail Tsukiyama. This is Gail Tsukiyama returns with this new historical novel about a Japanese American family set against the backdrop of Hawaii's sugar plantations and an eruption of the Mauna Loa volcano in 1935. So we meet Daniel Abe, who's a young doctor in Chicago, and he's finally coming back to Hawaii. He has his own reasons for coming back to his childhood home, but it's not to revisit the past, unlike his uncle Koji, who lives with the memories of Daniel's mother, Mariko, who is the love of his life. He also has scars of a life hard lived. He can't wait to see Daniel, who he's always thought of as a son, but he knows the time has come to tell them the truth about his mother and his father. But Daniel's arrival coincides with the awakening of the Mauna Loa volcano, and its dangerous path toward their village stirs both new and long ago passions in their community. It alternates between past and present from the day of the volcano eruption in 1935 to decades prior. So, which I found that very interesting. You learn a lot about this this time in history, and it interweaves the stories of Daniel, his uncle Koji, and Mariko, and it's this very rich and vibrant and bittersweet chorus that celebrates their lifelong bond to one another and to their immigrant community. This was inspired by Gail Tsukiyama's Japanese Hawaiian father's story. The novel alternates between past and present and weaves together the stories of the young doctor, his mother, and the uncle who thinks of him as a son, and this immigrant community. As the volcano threatens, it also unearths long-held secrets. It is beautiful. You feel the again. It's very much like Christina Baker Kline. It's very evocative and it's very. You are there. You just feel the heat. You feel the. It's I don't know. I just felt myself sucked in. in every way. It's received a starred Kirkus and a starred booklist review. Starred booklist review says, Tsukiyama evokes the wild, opulent beauty of the island, the harsh lives of migrant workers, racist and domestic violence, mystical connections, the repercussions of a love triangle, and the tolls of age. As the volcano erupts, long-buried secrets and guilt surge to seismic effect. Tsukiyama's dramatic yet discerningly congenial novel confronts the precariousness of existence and celebrates the healing power of generosity and love. The starred review from Kirkus. It's absolutely beautiful, and I can't recommend it highly enough. On sale July 7th.
Okay, we're going to talk about When We Were Young and Brave by Hazel Gaynor. So you know Hazel. She is beloved. She's won so many awards. She's a New York Times bestselling author. Like everyone loves her. And this is her latest historical fiction. And it's a little known piece of World War II fiction that, or a little piece of history that you might not know. And it's not really represented a lot in books either. So in this, it's 1941 in China, and we have Elspeth Kent, who took a teaching post at a missionary school in northern China. She left England. She's kind of unhappy. She wanted to get away, and she gets, a lot of joy from teaching these people in her charge, and a lot of them they're from England with their parents who are stationed there. And then we have 10-year-old Nancy Plummer. She's felt safe at this Jifu school, and she's protected by her British status. And so they're all pretty safe. They feel safe within their little bubble. They're there for schooling. And then Japan invades China and declares war on England. So then all of the children there that are English and their teachers become displaced, and they're separated from their family, and they face years of uncertainty and deprivation under the rule of the Japanese army. And they are kind of moved into these sections and put away from everybody else, and they kind of have to find their own sense of unity and how they're going to get through this. And also there's this section of girl guides too with Miss Kent. So she has kind of a lot of people under her charge, and now she doesn't know what she's going to do. And again, like I said, it's based on these true events, which, we always love World War II history, but I think it's important to learn about these smaller sections that we might not know about. And it's great to do it through historical fiction. And we're going to have a library hardcover, so great for the library. And we have all of these great quotes. We have one that from Mary Beth Keane. Let me get to that. A story of courage, friendship, and humanity in the bleakest of circumstances. Gaynor takes a slice of true history and brings it to vivid life. I love these characters and rooted for them all the way. And so, it's, again, like I said, little told history, but this idea of bravery through really uncertain times is something we can all understand. I mean, especially right now, and it resonates today. So we can kind of see their hope and how strong they were. So that's When We Were Young and Brave by Hazel Gaynor, and that comes out in October.
Okay, The Girl in the Mirror by Rose Carlyle. Oh boy, this is a diabolical thriller, debut thriller, in fact, with 100,000 ounce print. So it's a big deal for us. I think that frames it well. For fans of The Wife Between Us and Something in the Water, and one of my personal favorites, The Last Mrs. Parrish. I think that comps nicely. And this follows two sisters, Iris and Summer, who are close to identical, but there's something a little different. They're mirror twins, which means, everything is mirrored to them. So actually, Iris, her heart is slightly right, and then Summer is slightly left. Iris is insecure and cynical. Summer seems to have a blessed life. And this basically follows Iris, who has long been envious of her sister. And then she receives a call from Summer, who is desperate. They are in Thailand. Her young child is having a medical emergency. And Summer desperately needs Iris's help getting their yacht away from Thailand to Seychelles. And Iris sees this as a wonderful opportunity. She's struggling. There's not much going on in her life. And it also gives her an opportunity to spend some long one-on-one time with Summer's beautiful, mysterious husband. And this sets off a diabolical plan that Iris has long been hoping to carry out. Again, it's twisted and brilliant. And there was a great behind the book essay on Edelweiss written by Rose that kind of talks about the inspiration of the book. She talked with her own sister. They were actually co-writing this book. They were writing a very similar book, and they kind of put their heads together, decided that Rose had this story, and then she took it and ran with it. And it is just so fun, and it's a great escape. You just get some really beautiful locations. There's a lot of money, a lot of luxury, and then also, again, twists abound, including one of the best endings you'll find. So that's The Girl in the Mirror, coming in October.
Okay, The Writer's Library by Nancy Pearl and Jeff Schwager. Perhaps you've heard of Nancy Pearl. Yes, we love her, America's Librarian. This is a compilation of 23 living literary legends who talk about the books that made them think, brought them joy, and changed their lives. We all know Nancy. She's the superhero of literacy. We have a video, but before I get to that, I just want to make sure that you know that Susan Orlean has written the introduction for this book. There are beautiful line drawings and insightful interviews with writers across genres and generations. This is a perfect gift book for avid readers and librarians and writers. It's just Nancy has sat down with Jeff, and they have traveled around the country meeting with authors. And well, here's a word from Nancy, and she can do a better job than I can of describing her book. Chris, Arlene?
Hi, I'm Nancy Pearl, one of the authors of The Writer's Library. I'm really excited about this book because I think what it does is give us a picture of some of our favorite writers in a very new way, because we're not talking in these interviews about the books they've written, but we're talking about the books that they've read and loved. And whether it's Luis Urrea talking about the experience of being read, of having his mother read Tom Sawyer to him, or Madeline Miller telling us how much she loved Watership Down, or Jonathan Lethem talking about how much time he spent in those used bookstores on 4th Avenue, and so much more. It was a pleasure to interview these writers, and it was a pleasure to learn so much about them as readers. Thanks.
Well, we love Nancy Pearl, and she, as I say, she's interviewed Richard Russo, Jennifer Egan, T.C. Boyle, Michael Chabon. The list goes on and on. It's really wonderful, and they've really sort of made picked quite a range of writers of different interests and different types of writers. And so you will find someone there for sure in this list of literary legends. So that is The Writer's Library by Nancy Pearl and Jeff Schwager.
Okay, The Talented Miss Farwell by Emily Gray Tedrowe. I told you we would come back to it, and I delivered on my promise. So this is such a fun book. This novel by Emily she's a Chicago-based author, so anyone in Chicago, take note. And of course, we want to remind you of that really cool episode on our podcast that just came out with Emily and her father, Alan Gray, who is the director of the Darien Library. That was such a fun conversation, and they really talk all about this book and get into this character, and let me tell you a little bit about it. So Catch Me If You Can meets Patricia Highsmith. Perfect. It's set in the late 1990s. Lots of fun fashion there. And we have Miss Rebecca Farwell. So on one side, people know her as Reba. She's this woman who comes in to the Christie's in New York City and just kind of is a shark. She gets what she wants. She knows art. She has outstanding business acumen. Like, she is there to get things done. So she buys all this art, and she is known really well as kind of a wealthy, sophisticated woman. But then 1,000 miles away from New York, in the small town of Pearson, Illinois, she's someone else entirely to this whole group of people. She's not Reba Farwell. She's Becky, and she lives in her family's farmhouse. She wears sensible shoes, and she's the town's treasurer, and she kind of saves them when they're a little on the decline, and she tries to find money for them and works really hard, late hours. So what is the difference between these two people? Why is she living this whole second life? And but what the town doesn't know in Pearson is that she may have be putting borrowed funds used to finance her art habit into a separate account, and she's gonna pay them back. She'll pay Pearson back, but art is really cutthroat, so can she? And so we see her unravel, and as she's dealing with the debt of this small town that she loves, and how long she can kind of keep up this double life. It's really a really fun read, and I urge you to go check out her behind the book piece, which is part of a press kit on Edelweiss, where she talks all about the inspiration behind this. It's kind of it's not based, but she got inspiration from this true story of a woman named Rita Crundwell, who is admitted operator of what is believed to be the largest case of municipal fraud in U.S. history. And she just totally embezzled all this money, and people knew her different ways. So go check that out, because she talks about reading all about that and how this evolved into it. And she talks about it on the podcast as well. But, it's such a fun read. But if you're a fan of a good con story, this is perfect for you. Or even if you are just really love seeing strong women who maybe are underestimated by people and can kind of get in under the radar and make big change. It's so cool, and I love seeing those stories kind of meet in the middle and take on the world. So there's also this great Rebecca Makkai quote, which I won't read because you can see it. But lots of love for this one. And like I said, one of our best podcast episodes. So that's one I'm really going to point you towards to find out more about this book. So that's The Talented Miss Farwell by Emily Gray Tedrowe, and that's out in September.
All right, The Arrest by Jonathan Lethem. This is a book I have not read anything like before. I can safely say that. It's brilliant and madcap. It's kind of the anti-post-apocalyptic novel that seems like Jonathan Lethem was born to write. So you'll know him from The Feral Detective and Motherless Brooklyn. This is a novel that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, which is called now The Arrest, where people aren't fighting each other. It's just things are different. The guns aren't working, cars aren't working, computers, airplanes, all our modern comforts no longer work. And you follow Sandy, who now goes, he was in LA as a screenwriter. Now he's living in Maine with his sister, who runs like a rural kind of all organic restaurant in this small Maine community. And she kind of feeds this community. And again, things are different. They're just, it's almost bucolic, you could say. That is until Sandy's former partner in Hollywood, this kind of larger than life producer with a huge ego, shows up in his giant nuclear powered tunnel digger. And from this, a certain series of events take place that kind of disrupt this nice, again, functioning community in this very different world from the one we know. It's speculative fiction, but it has a huge sense of humor, really lyrical, smart writing. Again, it's just a really brilliant, fun novel that's refreshing, and that's all, these post-apocalyptic, really dark novels. It's definitely not that. I loved it. It was very unique, unforgettable, from, I think, a singular talent in Jonathan Lethem. So that's The Arrest, coming in November.
Okay, I have two great nonfictions coming for you, so stay tuned, back to back nonfiction. The first one is The Fragile Earth by David Remnick and Henry Finder. David Remnick, who is from the New Yorker, and we're so excited to have this groundbreaking reporting, just anthology of all this great climate change writing. It's really, they're the best at what they do, and their writing endures at the New Yorker. So to have it all in one place is really special. So 1 year after climatologist James Hansen first came before the Senate committee to testify that the Earth was now warmer than it had ever been in recorded history, we had New Yorker writer Bill McKibben publish a deeply reported and considered piece on climate change and what it could mean for our greater planet. And to some, that seemed very alarmist. Like we didn't need to be that upset about it. And now looking back, I don't know if it was enough of an alarm. But then it set off all of these stories. And so the New Yorker has just become this this place for all of these people to come and write about all of the things taking place in climate change and the last 3 decades. And so they've devoted a lot of time to this throughout their history. And so they're describing in this anthology, it's a full, just kind of like all-encompassing view of climate change. And they're going to talk about the causes of the crisis, political and ecological conditions that we find ourselves in now, or even just scenarios and hopefully solutions we face. But it's the best writing on global warming that we have. And it's just an all-star A-list cast of contributors featuring, just to name a few, Jonathan Franzen, Catherine Schultz, Elizabeth Colbert, and of course, Bill McKibben that I mentioned previously. And, you know, it's urgent info that we need to know and we need to explore, that it's really important to have this long form report that we can dive deep into if you don't know much about it or if you want to learn more. And this, I mean, it's not going away. When we come back, when we go back to our offices, it's not something that's going to go away, and we have to keep thinking about it. And so it's just going to be a great anthology to keep around and live on forever. And then next is Fossil Men by Kermit Pattison. And this is such a fun read. And it you know, we think science, sometimes you think stuffy, but this is such a readable nonfiction. You really go there, and I've read some of the first of it, and I wanted to just stop all that I was doing and continue reading because it draws you in. And it's been described as a literary Indiana Jones story, which I think is so fun because there's a cast of characters. It's so fun. So in this story, we have a behind-the-scenes account of this discovery of a skeleton named Artie, and it's a human ancestor far older than Lucy, and that's what they kind of always referenced as that was going to be what they looked for history, the oldest skeleton, and now they found Artie. So what does that change in the scientific community? And then, of course, I said there was all these cool characters, so what is that? So in 1994, it was found, there was a fossil hunting legend, Tim White. I know what you're thinking. Isn't he the Steve Jobs of paleoanthropology? Oh, you're right, he is. I love that he's described as that. And he uncovered the bones of this ancestor in Ethiopia. And it just dates more than 1 million years older than Lucy. And so it changed the way, like I said, we even think about evolution and how humans started walking in certain ways and living their lives. And so it's the first full-length exploration of this discovery. And within this group of scientists, there's a lot of competition. And again, Tim White is a character in himself. He tells it like it is. And so you get to just see all of these political things play out within this grander scheme. And Kermit spent so much time on the ground researching. He went multiple times to Ethiopia. He learned from Tim White. And so it's just riveting pop science at its very best. I really urge you to read it. If you like nonfiction, that's great. But even if you don't, I think this is a perfect way to pull people in that want just a cool story and learn their origins at the same time. So that's Fossil Men by Kermit Pattison.
Okay, wow. The Cold Millions by Jess Walter. I think many of you are probably excited about this book. I'm excited about this book. Let's set things off with a video message from Jess Walter himself, which I'll pull up now.
Oh, look, a Zoom full of librarians, my favorite people. And I happen to be sitting here pretending to read my new novel, The Cold Millions by Jess Walter, which comes out this October. The Cold Millions is about 2 adventuring brothers, Gig and Ry Dolan, who get caught up in the sweeping battle for economic and social justice in the early 1900s. It's also about the 2 women they meet, Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, the courageous labor activist and suffragist, and the great Ursula, who performs on a vaudeville stage with a live cougar. It's also about my hometown, Spokane, Washington, a place that inspires me the way the Italian Riviera inspired my last novel, Beautiful Ruins. So thank you for all you do, and I hope you like The Cold Millions as much as I appear to. Thanks so much.
Okay. I think Mr. Jess Walters sets up this novel pretty well there. I just want to say, I know Beautiful Ruins was a Virginia Stanley favorite. I hadn't come across Jess's work before. I hadn't read him. Within 2 pages of reading this novel, I was struck by this is a great author that I'm working with, whether it's the richness of the prose, the historical details, the believability of the characters. Every single possible part of this book that could be brilliant is brilliant. It just has everything. So I highly recommend you go out, read Beautiful Ruins, but also just get excited for this book. The eGalley is available now. It is a special, special novel. It was absolutely striking. So that's The Cold Millions by Jess Walter.
Thanks, Chris. And I echo everything that Chris said. And if you haven't read Beautiful Ruins, you must, because it's so beautiful, as the title says. Okay, World Travel by Anthony Bourdain. Well, we are, it is bittersweet here. We are, when in 2018, when we all learned about the passing of Anthony Bourdain, we were everyone was shocked, terribly saddened. What a loss, what a terrible loss, but what contributions he made to the world. And this book was underway at the time of Anthony Bourdain's death. This is a travel guide that captures his expansive, adventuresome approach to travel. It's his writing on some of his favorite places, entertaining, practical, fun, and frank. It includes essential advice on getting there, what to eat, where to stay, and even what to avoid. Also included in this collection are a handful of essays by friends and colleagues and family, all about traveling with Tony. As I say, the plans were underway and the manuscript was put together by his longtime lieutenant and co-writer, Laurie Woolliver. She sifted through the entire body of Tony's work to compile his fun and frank opinions on places around the world in his own voice, also while supplementing those materials with real helpful travel information and then further context. This is a special project that just captures the essence of how Tony traveled. The book is also includes exclusive essays from friends, family, and colleagues in which they share meaningful personal memories of working and traveling alongside him. He saw more of the world than nearly anyone, and this book, World Travel, An Irreverent Guide, is proof of that. So that's World Travel by Anthony Bourdain, and that's going on sale in October. And this is me, A Walk Around the Block by Spike Carlson. This is very much in the spirit of Bill Bryson. This is about Spike Carlson, who he's the author of A Splintered History of Wood. And he uses this walk around his hometown to explore how every part of our urban landscape, from manhole covers and recycling bins to pedestrian crossings and bike lanes, impact and shape our lives in this fascinating work of popular science. I thought this was such a perfect book for libraries. I just find all of this so fascinating. He investigates how every element of urban landscape affects our lives. It's got a witty tone about it, and he takes us on a tour of things like how adding a front porch to a house both reduces crime and increases property value, or how planting a $10 boulevard tree cuts air conditioning costs by 20%, generates $30,000 worth of oxygen, and $31,000 worth of erosion control. This is it's playful and it's profound, and it opens your eyes to the wonder of the essential stuff that we walk by every day. He sprinkles a lot of facts about New York throughout this book, but he also has facts about his hometown of Stillwater, Minnesota. There's stuff in there about Paris and Montreal and Salt Lake City and a few others. I think it's really interesting. I think it's fun. It's informative. And I don't know. I think now more than ever, we need to know we're all walking around. We've got time. And it's a very interesting book. So just sort of finding out about mischievous squirrels and manhole mysteries. I love this book. This is A Walk Around the Block by Spike Carlson.
Okay, very exciting. Dearly by Margaret Atwood. So this is a poetry collection, the first in over a decade for Margaret Atwood. And what many people, obviously Margaret Atwood is a big part of the cultural conversation right now, whether it's The Handmaid's Tale and the TV show based upon it, or her newest novel, The Testaments, which won the Booker Prize in 2019. But not as many people know that Margaret Atwood has a long-standing, very respected collection of poetry that she's published. And she returns to that, turning her one-of-a-kind imagination into a collection that contemplates love, loss, the passage of time. Zombies also make appearances, just to let you know, for any Margaret Atwood fans. It's just beautiful, carefully crafted poetry. There is a full poem available on Edelweiss. I'm going to read the last stanza just because I think it kind of paints that mood that Margaret Atwood can compose so well. This is the poem Blackberries, just the last stanza. Some berries occur in sun, but they are smaller. It's as I've always told you, the best ones grow in shadow. I think people are looking for poetry more and more, and I think who better to provide it than the one and only Margaret Atwood. So this is a big publishing event for us. This poetry collection is coming November 10th.
Okay, The Orchard by David Hopen. This is one of my favorite reads of the season. I love this one so much. It's a debut, which I cannot believe it's a debut. He's so young, he's 26, and he's written this beautifully sculpted literary fiction book. I can't tell you how much of a joy it is to read. And it is a little heady in a way where it kind of takes you out and makes you think, but it also has just a cast of really great characters too. And in this book, we have Ari Eden, who has grown up ultra-Orthodox in Brooklyn, Orthodox Jewish, and he is really dedicated to his studies. That's kind of all he has known. But then again, it provides for a really lonely life. And then his family suddenly announces that they're moving to a really glitzy Miami suburb, and he's going to have a chance to reinvent himself. And they enroll him in the Jewish Academy there, and he is a little overwhelmed with how different it is, not only in place and space where they're going to pool parties every day, but also just how they take their studies. They have this dizzying wealth, and they're really kind of pursue the finer things in life, as you say. And he is taken under the wing of this really golden boy, Noah, and then he also has Evan, who's this brooding genius on the side who has lost his mom and is dealing with that. And so he's kind of stuck between all of these friends that he has, and he's trying to decide why they've taken such a liking to him, why they want to include him in their group, but also, when no one else is around, what does his faith mean to him, and how does he carry that out? And so I think for someone who I have nothing in common with, I had everything in common with, because it's about growing up and it's coming of age and learning how you're going to act and what you're going to believe when no one is standing over your shoulder and telling you what to believe. And so, if you're a fan of The Secret History, it's perfect for you. Someone caught between two worlds and feeling like they have to choose. And we have this great quote that just came in today by Gary Schweinard, and it says a tremendous read, a brilliant excursion into the world of Orthodox Jews, both thrilling and philosophical. Steingart, sorry. And that's just a perfect way to sum it up, because you have this great voice from a new up-and-coming author who only great things are coming, and you will be sucked into this world and want to stay there and learn more about Ari and his friends. So that's The Orchard by David Hopen, coming out in November.
Dear Anne by Bobby Ann Mason. This is the first new novel in a decade from this beloved author who has won the Penn Hemingway Award. She was also a finalist for the Pulitzer, the American Book Award, National Book Critics Circle. This is a story about a woman who's kind of looking back on her life and the what ifs. What if she had taken this road, not that road? We meet this woman, Anne Workman. She's very smart but naive. She's a misfit who's traveled from rural Kentucky to graduate school in the transformative years of the late 60s. She really wants a boyfriend. That's what she wants. And then she meets Jimmy as if by magic, and everything sort of comes together. But then the Vietnam War looms and the country's in turmoil and their future is uncertain. And many years later, she recalls this time in her life, this innocence and her obsession with Jimmy. And as she faces another life crisis, she is looking at her life and wondering, what if? She imagines what her life might have been like had she chosen differently all those years ago. What if she'd gone to Stanford as her mother wanted her to do instead of the little small town on the East Coast? What if she'd been caught up in the summer of love and its subsequent dark turns, which would her own good sense have saved her from disaster? This is beautifully written, expertly told. It's a wrenching story of one woman's life and the choices she made. It's just about looking back, the interplay of memory and imagination, and the what ifs. It's absolutely beautiful, and I can't wait to read it. She is a national treasure. Next.
Next we have Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellafleur. This is such a fun one. It's a rom-com. We all love that, but also just queer voices. And it's a take on nods to Bridget Jones, which of course, brings us back to Pride and Prejudice. In this story, we have Darcy Lowell, who's very serious and career-driven, to the point, and her brother sets her up with a woman he started working with, who's an astrologer behind this popular Twitter meme account, Oh My Stars, and she's very dreamy and quite literally starry-eyed. And so let's just say that the date does not go well. It's not what they think is a match, and they're very different. They don't think they can ever see eye to eye. And but Darcy's really tired of her brother saying that she's never going to meet someone, so she kind of lies and says it went well, and that sets them on this whole course where they have to have a fake relationship. We love that trope, and the brother kind of oversees all this, so they have to keep it going. There's a really fun escape room date, which is one of my favorites, just to try to solve what they're doing. It's really fun holiday rom-com, and we love fresh modern voices and two queer heroines. If you're a co-star fan, you're into astrology, perfect. There's little Quizlets at the beginning that tell you what you are based on that chapter, what your rom-com is. And I want to, it's got YA appeal, but if you're a fan of Talia Hibbert, that's for your red, white, and royal blue. And I urge you to go listen to our podcast episode with Alexandria that we did at PLA, because you'll learn so much more about it, and that's on our SoundCloud as well.
All right, next up is The Solitude of Wolverines by Alice Henderson. This is a great kind of lyrical wildlife thriller. I very much thought of James McLaughlin's Bearskin. It's in that vein, and it follows a wildlife biologist stationed in Montana who is tracking the movements of wolverines, both on foot and by planting cameras around the nature preserve. And upon reviewing the footage, this biologist, Alex Carter, discovers what seems to be a severely injured man lost and wandering in the woods. And she quickly reports this to the local authorities, but after searches come up empty, the law enforcement seems to be very eager to dismiss the case altogether, which really raises Alex's suspicions. Quickly, Alex finds herself in the middle of some very, very much larger and dangerous schemes, and she is suddenly the target of these criminal masterminds. It's, again, a very kind of lyrical, very smart thriller series. It's the first in what's going to be a series for fans of C.J. Box, Jane Harper, Nevada Barr, and William Kent Kruger. And there's also a great behind the book essay available on Edelweiss, which gives you a hint of Alice's inspiration. She herself is actually a sanctuary monitor for the Humane Society Wildlife Land Trust, so she knows of which she writes. But it also gives you a hint of just how smart and lyrical her writing is. It's really beautiful. She said, "I'm always thinking of ways I can inspire people to reconnect with and experience nature, and utilizing my love of writing inspired me. And so Alex Carter took shape in my imagination." So this is coming October 27th. We're very excited. That's The Solitude of Wolverines.
Sex with Presidents by Eleanor Herman. This is a fascinating work of popular history by the New York Times bestselling author of Sex with Kings and the Royal Art of Poison. And this is uncovering bedroom secrets. So that's the the slide that's the bullets that's up there. So Americans have a reputation for being straight-laced, and many of the nation's leaders have been anything but puritanical. Alexander Hamilton had a steamy affair with a blackmailing prostitute. John F. Kennedy swam nude with female staff in the White House swimming pool. Is it possible the qualities needed to run for president, narcissism, a thirst for power, a desire for importance, go hand in hand with a tendency to sexual misdoing? This is an entertaining and eye-opening book. Eleanor Herman revisits some of the sex scandals that have rocked the nation's capital and shocked the public while asking the provocative questions: does rampant adultery show a lack of character or the stamina needed to run the country, or perhaps both? While Americans have judged their leaders' affairs harshly compared to other nations, did they mostly just hate being lied to? And do they now clearly care more about issues other than a politician's sex life? This is timely. It addresses why we seem so willing to repeatedly overlook sexual indiscretion and worse, outright criminal behavior in our elected officials, ranging from consensual affairs to rape. She is a serious historian. She's written this with wicked wit and humor, and there is a lot to cover in this book. So that is Sex with Presidents by Eleanor Herman. Really wonderful. Thanks. Next.
Okay, The Greatest Beer Run Ever by John Schick Donahue and J.T. Malloy. This is the shocking and adventurous true story of John Schick Donahue, who in 1967, at age 26, decided while drinking in a New York City bar with his friends that he would go to his friends in Vietnam and transport something they desperately needed, which was beer. So what started as a harebrained plan suddenly found John Schick Donahue on a boat setting sail for Vietnam with a case of alcohol and one, again, harebrained plan that turned out to be reality. As you can see, it's going to be a major motion picture directed by Peter Farrelly, who directed Green Book. This is a feel-good story. Malaki McCourt says you will laugh, you will cry, but you will not be sorry that you read this rollicking story. So that is coming November 10th, The Greatest Beer Run Ever.
Next is The Forgotten Daughter by Joanna Goodman. If you are a fan of Joanna Goodman, you probably remember The Home for Unwanted Girls, which was so wonderful, and you'll recognize a few of the casts from that in this book, but I want to stress you do not have to have read the first one in order to read this. It stands on its own. And in this story, it's 1992, French-Canadian factions are popping up in Quebec, and we have one woman, Veronique, who is a daughter of a radical separatist who's convicted of kidnapping or murdering a prominent politician in the 70s. And she's kind of embraced her father's cause, and she kind of falls for James, who's this French Canadian, a journalist of French Canadian heritage, and he kind of opposes this separatization. And so his sister Elodie, who's from the book before, was one of the Duplessis orphans, which I learned so much about in the first book, and you will in this one. She's kind of fighting for her reparations, which is warranted. And they kind of all figure out their familial bonds and who's going to side with who. It's a really great story and a great piece of true history and this historical fiction. Great for book clubs, a lot of chewy things to talk about, and it's going to be a library hardcover as well. So, and the author Joanna lives in Toronto, so she knows all about this history and does a great job spotlighting it.
Okay, These Violent Delights by Micah Nemerever. This is a great debut that is part The Secret History, part Call Me By Your Name. It takes place in 1970s Pittsburgh and follows two fast friends, talented artist Paul, who's sensitive and insecure, comes from a working class family, and then the charming Julian, who is also kind of like his sole intellectual equal. He comes from money. He's charismatic, but also ultimately very cruel and selfish. And you follow them as this fast found intimacy spirals into this kind of like feverish friendship. You can see it's Hitchcockian, and this friendship, as it evolves, gets to a point where it is so all-consuming that once they're faced with a very precarious situation, it devolves into an act of violence that they both must navigate. It's really exquisitely plotted. It's really smart, readable, just a big deal for a debut. We're really excited about Micah being on our list. So that is These Violent Delights by Micah Namerever, and it's coming September 15th.
Oh, When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. We love Alyssa Cole. I'm sure you all do too. This is such a fun book for her. It's a thriller, and she's an award-winning romance author. You all know and love her, but this one is something truly unique. It's Rear Window meets Get Out. It's about a woman who lives in Brooklyn, and as her community is getting gentrified, she decides she's going to kind of take back this moment and make a walking tour showing all the history, and to which Alyssa has done a lot of research because she's originally from Brooklyn. And she teams up with her neighbor Theo, who's just moved in, kind of guilty of being the gentrifier, and they're gonna take on this. But then they decide maybe it's not a coincidence that some of her neighbors are moving out, and she's got to see maybe it's a conspiracy. Some creepy things start happening. Really fun. We love Alyssa, and she has done it again with this romantic suspense. It just illustrates the thing that that allows every marginalized people and community to survive injustice. It's the support of their community, and we love this one from her. So that's No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, out in September.
And the last book we're going to present today is The Transatlantic Book Club by Felicity Hayes McCoy. You know her from the Library at the Edge of the World series, which was the number 4 Library Reads book pick back in its day, which had received glowing reviews from indie bookstores and libraries alike. This is the 4th in the series. There's a hardcover library edition that is also available as a paperback original, and Felicity Hayes McCoy's returns with some old characters and some new characters. And this is the enchanting, cozy new novel that's perfect for fans of Jenny Colgan, Nina George, and Nancy Thayer, and it's about the residents of Ireland's Finfarron Peninsula. They set up a Skype book club with the little U.S. town known as Resolve, where generations of Finfarron's immigrants have settled. So Cassie Fitzgerald is eager to cheer up her recently widowed Grant, so she persuades the Lisburg Library to set up this book club and links Finfarron Peninsula with the residents of Resolve. But of course, there are always fun and interesting things that come about when there's a book club. This is a perfect book for book clubs. It's engaging, it's commercial. There's themes of family, relationships, home, and community all at its core. It is really just the perfect book club because it's about a book club. Readers will discover the Lisburg Library Book Club, which works both as a running joke because they never manage to discuss the book they're supposed to be reading. Hello. And it's an opportunity to draw in the old and new, cross-generational and transatlantic characters who give the series its sense of being set in a living, contemporary rural Irish community. There's palpable Irish spirit in this book. I love, love, love this series. And it's just fun, and the characters they're so real. They're funny. Start from the beginning and don't stop. That's all I can tell you. It's she's just got this terrific, terrific sense of place, of characters, of voice, and you're gonna love this. So if you haven't started, do read Library at the Edge of the World and just keep on going. That's Felicity Hayes McCoy's in the Transatlantic Book Club, and that is coming out in November. So I think that is our last book. We do want to make sure that you know about our book club read. So while this is the end of the presentation of titles, we want to make sure that you know about books that have come out or about to come out, some paperback reprints that we want you to know about. So we've put them all together in a grid. And Lainey, do you want to talk about it a little bit, or Chris?
We have our book club reads on our book club website, which we also have that link in the spreadsheet we sent you. We put everything in that, including the books we talked about in the sizzle reel and book club, a link to our book club where we have fed all of these really great reads for you in there. So check that out. These are listed in that grid too, the ones that you see on this.
We just want to make it clear that, you know, this is a strange time. We all know that. And there are books that came out at this time that, you know, if we could, we would spend hours talking about them. So we have put them all, Chris has put them all into the book club catalog. So there you'll find new hardcovers, new paperbacks, some paperback reprints, books that we think that you will really want to know about. Some will lend themselves quite well to book club reads. So do check it out. We've tried to put a collection of, you know, just a wide range of interests in there, including health and wellness, some cookbooks, some novels, some nonfiction. So this is just an idea, but if you go to the grid, you'll see many, many, many more books that we put in there for you. So we thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. And I don't know, Don, if there's any time for questions or something.
Oh, thank you so much. What a wonderful, enticing preview of forthcoming books. And thank you for those exceptional videos. Really great. Everyone's been asking about galleys and e-galleys. Contact your our Virginia, Laney, and Chris here, your Library Love Fest group, for whitelisting for e-galleys. That's the easiest way to get these books. So yes. I am here to tell, oh yeah, go ahead, Virginia.
Well, no, I just wanted to say that if you're whitelisted, terrific. If you're not whitelisted to receive our books, Laney, tell them exactly what they need to do in order to get whitelisted. And then Donna, I'll be quiet.
Yeah, so you can email librarylovefest@harpercollins.com or me, whichever, but send it to Library Love Fest. We can all see it. And you will just please make sure to send your library email so that I can kind of cut down on some extra work trying to figure out which library you're with, and make sure you're up to date on Edelweiss and NetGalley that you're a librarian, and we'll set you up. It'll be all good.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate that. So for all of you attendees out there, you will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars. There you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones. Always great programs in your future. As a reminder, I'd like to officially invite you all to celebrate, and I think we have a slide for this, the 2020 Andrew Carnegie Excellence in Fiction and Nonfiction winners. Valeria Lucelli and Adam Higginbotham will be there to accept their awards, and there'll be a keynote speech from the HarperCollins' own Natasha Trethewey. Watch for more announcements about the event from Booklist, RUSA, and ALA. If you haven't already, please be sure to check out the Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors are posting weekly about all things books and library land. Booklist has a digital edition of the magazine, which you can connect to your subscription online. This format pairs the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access, and it is included free with all Booklist subscriptions. Not yet a subscriber? Join us. Take advantage of this special webinar offer to get print, online, digital, and full archive access to Booklist for only $99. In case you haven't heard, all Booklist and Booklink's digital content is currently free to everyone. Please check out our website to begin reading. Thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes that made this possible, and to our amazing presenters, Virginia, Chris, and Laney. Thanks to HarperCollins and the Library Love Fest team. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon. This concludes today's webinar.